Alrighty, so now all we have left to do is implement our YouTube player. So let's go ahead and write our init method first. We'll go ahead and we'll hide ourselves, and then we'll do this observable sequence. So this nice little asynchronous code. Now what we're gonna do is the way the YouTube API player works, iframe API player works. You can go and you can read about this online. But what it's going to do is we need to attach a callback on our window object, and then we need to import a YouTube script. So I'm going to say window.on YouTube with a capital T, iframe API ready. So it's important that you get all of the casing right here on YouTube iframe API ready, because that's going to be a callback invoked by YouTube once it's done initializing. And once it's done initializing, I can say this underscore player equals new yt dot player, this element 0, and then pass in configuration options. Now yt is actually going to be on Windows, so I can just do window.yt player to get ESLint to shut up. Okay, so we'll do this element 0, and then we'll pass in options. So our options are width is going to be 100%, height is going to be 100%. Our video ID is going to be blank because we don't know what to play yet while we're initializing. Our player vars, or player variables, are going to be disable KB is 1, enable JS API is 1, modest branding is 1, Ivy load policy is 3, and REL is 0. Which will disable showing related videos at the end. So you can look at all these parameters on the documentation for the YouTube player. Then I'm going to say events is going to be an object, and on our onReady event is simply going to say observer.complete. So remember our observer all the way up here. This will complete the asynchronous sequence once we're initialized. Now, be sure to add the next line of code right here, after we write the on YouTube iframe API ready. What we're going to do is we're going to say script source is https www.youtube.com iframe underscore API. And then we're going to say append to, and we're going to just pass in a reference to body. And something's messed up there. Oh yeah, we're probably going to need to import jQuery, aren't we? See, ESLint is your friend. So we're going to import money from jQuery and save that out. And that's it. That's how you initialize the YouTube API, the YouTube iframe API. It's super simple. I've worked with quite a few different players and player APIs in the past, and the YouTube API is actually one of the most straightforward to work with. All right, let's go ahead and implement the rest of our methods. Now that we have a reference to this underscore player, which we know will be initialized by the time any of this other code gets executed. To get the current time, we do this player.getCurrentTime. So there's an actual method on the YouTube getCurrentTime method that'll return where we are. And now let's do seek. So let's scroll all the way down, or play rather. So for play, we can remove that console log. I'm going to say this player load video by ID, source URL, and then time. Remember that I added that additional time parameter in the last video, so make sure you add that as well. And then that's it. That's our play. And then stop, we're just going to hide. Or we could also actually tell the player to stop physically, which probably would be a good idea. So I'm actually going to go ahead and pause the video. So this player.pause video. When we stop, we don't want to unload the player. We just want to pause it and hide it. And we can remove that comment. And then for seeking, very straightforward, this player.seek to time. And there you go. So let's come back over here. And let's maybe refresh. And it doesn't seem like things are quite working the way we intended them to. Let's go ahead and make sure in our network tab that we are requesting YouTube's API. It doesn't seem like we are. So this code seems not to have been executed. So let's go ahead and console log whoa out there. And we did not even get a whoa. Let's console log whoa right there. Oops. We did get a whoa there. So it seems that our player.js file isn't, or class is not subscribing properly to that init list. So we do comp subscribe here. We merge in init list, which is player init. Players, we can console log out init list if we want to. That's a valid thing to do. This is an observable, so that seems like a what we want. Let's do a do here. Do console log test. Oops, console log test. And we don't even get the test out there. Interesting. I wonder if the behavior of toArray changed, or maybe I'm just... Oh, you know what? I bet I messed that up. So make sure to go ahead and add a double quote there. So it seems that we just weren't even adding in that script tag. And I'll self-close that because why not? All right. So let's see if our players are being added. Let's go ahead and refresh just for good measure. Players are still not being added. Interesting. You know, it'd probably be helpful if we actually attached our players to our component. Wow, it is getting late, isn't it? But don't worry, we are almost finished with this. So let's go ahead and attach our players. Let's say for let player of this players, player attach, and we want to attach to this element. And make sure you go ahead and do that. And check that out. This player's symbol iter. Oh, that's because we want to say let players in. Let type in this player's, if not this player's has own property type. Continue. Otherwise, this player's at type.attach. So make sure you do that. Of course, it's not an array. It is an object. And as a result, you have to use the for in loop and always make sure to check has own property. Okay, with that, we should have players. And inside of players, we do have a player YouTube with a display of none. So we are getting closer now. Oh, there we go. So let's go ahead and nuke that because... Okay, well, it added. That was awesome. But it doesn't seem that we had it be visible. So let's go ahead and identify what's going on with that. All right, it just seems that we didn't ever show the element. So if I come back here and refresh, you'll notice that the iframe is there, but the display is still set to none. So it seems that when we did play, we did this element show, but we did init, we did this element hide, and the did the show never get invoked, or is it calling stop? Show and hide. So let's go ahead and do those two things, and then we can look at the console and see what was going on there. Maybe reload. So we get show. You can ignore pretty much all of those errors. The YouTube API likes to throw a bunch of errors in the console. So we did get a show call, but we never got a hide call, but it's still invisible. I'm wondering if that's because we have a race condition where init is being called after, but we shouldn't. We shouldn't have that happening. So we have init, but then we have no show. No, init and then show. But, as you can see, our player is still indeed having a element style of display none on that. Specifically on the iframe. Oh, I know exactly what's happening right now. The problem is that we're appending the YouTube player right into this element. We actually do need a wrapper inside of this YouTube player. So I'm going to say const player element equals money. It's just a small thing that I forgot about with the YouTube player. It actually takes over the element. So we'll append it to this element. Again, some of these things are a bit finicky. And then we'll add the YouTube player right into player element at line 0. And I think, there we go. We now have a video. All right, let's go ahead and style this guy, because obviously that's not really the style that I'm looking for here. Right now, our size is being set by some sort of aspect ratio thing with the player, it seems, and then with our players. So what we need to do is we need to set the height of players and the height of player to maximum, and then our section player, I think I want to add in a fixed height. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's move this off to the side and come over here and jump into our player.scss, and let's start filling this in with stuff. Stuff is good. All right, so we're going to go section player, flex shrink is 0. Let's do a fixed height of 400 pixels and a position of relative and a display of flex and then a flex direction of column. So let's see what effect that has there. Okay. And then I'm going to do dot players, flex grow is going to be 1. And then display is going to be flex, and flex direction is going to be column. So pretty standard stuff. And then a position of relative inside of here. And then we're going to grab onto our iframe, and we're going to give him a flex grow of 1. So let's see what's going on here. So it is stretching. Our player's YouTube. Our player YouTube is not stretching, unfortunately. So let's figure out why that is. So inside of players, we have the flex grow, which we do have there, but we don't in the player. So let's go ahead and do player and do a flex grow of 1. And then move this off to the side. And so our player now flex grows to 1, and then our iframe still doesn't. That's because in our player, we also need to do a display flex inside of here. And now our iframe should have a flex grow of 1, player should have a display flex, and it should have a flex direction of column. And there we go. Our player is should be now a fixed height. So it's a fixed height of 400 pixels. Maybe I can say min height of like 200 pixels. Maybe that would be better. So let's see how it's calculating that size right now. It's currently set to, if we look at our chat player, it's currently 211. So now it'll collapse until it hits 200 pixels. Actually, I don't really like that behavior. I think what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to move this back to have a height of 300 pixels. And then I'm going to go into my chat. So let's refresh here. So we get a thing here. So we go into the chat. Where is that? That's under chat SGSS. And I'm going to set his flex grow to 1. So he'll have a flex grow of 1, but then I'll go into the player and leave his flex shrink as 0. And I think that'll give us the behavior we're looking for, where the size of the chat won't start to bounce around as more chat messages are received. And I can verify that really easily by hopping on over to my server and just typing in rs, which will restart the server. As you see, it's restarting. And refreshing so the chat buffer goes away. And give it a sec. Still not quite what I was looking for here. So for the chat, we want the flex grow to be 1 and align self stretch, but the player has a flex shrink of 0. And let's try what happens if we have a flex grow of 0. There we go. Okay, so all we need to do is add a flex grow of 0 to our player. Flex grow of 0. And there we go. Well, that's the player. We can go here, we can play any item, and it'll show up. I can duplicate this guy, move him over here, and do the same sort of thing. Play that, and it starts playing. And let's actually let it play for a second, and then do another client and see how well it syncs up with the time. So let's just give it a couple seconds. I'll pause for a minute here. So now we're at about 25 seconds on this video. So let's duplicate. And wow, it almost immediately picked up the fact we were 25 seconds there. And I can play Play that, and it's almost instant. So yeah, that is our player. So now we've basically implemented every single component. We have our user list, we have our chat list, we have our playlist, and we have the actual whole point that this project exists, the actual player that goes out and plays something. So obviously you can go and you can queue up your own videos. You can also work on your own, building your own services. All you got to do to put together a new service, a new place to get videos from, is to, on the server side, implement the API appropriately so it gets metadata such as the title and the length from a URL, and then just implement the player on the client side. So with that, there's not a whole lot else to say about the player. And I guess we'll see you guys in the next and the final section. So see you guys in the next video.